All righty. A good Monday afternoon to all of you. Welcome into the Chico Borman Show here on the Big Play Sports Network, available on Twitter, where we broadcast live at Chico Show CLE. Can also do so following along on YouTube. Go over to YouTube, type in the Chico Borman Show. If you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and you will be ready to go. We appreciate it. Also available wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple, Spotify, you can find us. We got a big show for you today. Of course, a lot of feel good, a lot of good vibes on this Monday. Even though it's not a victory Monday, even though they lost to the Bengals, it means nothing. Nothing. Good vibes because it's playoff week, baby. It's playoff week. The Browns are taking on the Browns are taking on the Texans in Houston. Because the Jaguars lost. That was like the only game I got right. I liked Tennessee to beat Jacksonville. And but other than that, not a whole lot. But Browns will take on the Houston Texans. Red hot CJ Stroud. We're going to get into that here in just a bit as well. Coming up, bottom of the hour, 12:30. Always a pleasure talking to, I think, one of the best columnists in the country, Terry Pluto. Obviously, some Browns. We're going to sprinkle some Cavs in there as well because don't look now. The Cavs have been playing very, very well. Granted, San Antonio's not very good, but just what they've been doing, Jared Allen has been doing over 7 games. They're shooting the ball, a lot of threes, but we'll sprinkle some Cavaliers basketball in there as well with Terry at the bottom of the hour. And then coming up in a little less than an hour, just after 1 o'clock tonight, there's only one college football game left, and it's for all the marbles. 14-0 Washington, 14-0 Michigan. Who will win the national championship? Michael Penix? If he has a game like he did last week against Texas, I think that UW is going to take it. The big difference is, Texas, while they were pretty good defensively, and I actually thought they were better maybe than they were, or at least they played that day, but that was more about Penix and the Washington offense. Michigan is much better than Texas defensively. Michigan is they're on another level when it comes to physicality, but it's a great, how can you get any better of a matchup? You've got Washington who, they throw it all around the yard with one of the best quarterbacks in the country, maybe the best quarterback in the country, in Michael Penix. You've got Rome Odunze, who is an incredible wide receiver, and while he might be a notch below Marvin Harrison Jr., it's not by that much. This guy's about 6'3", 215. They've got a trio of wideouts who are really good. So it's like everything that Michigan brings to the table in that secondary, they're going to be tested. So this is what you want. You want the great pass offense against the great Michigan defense. How does Michigan do when they have the ball? Can they just run it down their throat? Best defense is a ball control offense. They're going to try that. Anyway, coming up at 1, one of my favorite guys. I have not talked to this guy in a long, long time. And when I say, one of my favorites, one of the first I met in this business, Yogi Roth. He is a Pac-12 college football analyst out in California, but he grew up in Western Pennsylvania, walked on, was a wide receiver at Pitt University, then went on to become an assistant coach under Pete Carroll. This guy's lived an incredible life and still is. Coached under Pete Carroll, those great USC teams, was the quarterback's coach, guys like Carson Palmer, guys like Mark Sanchez and Matt Leinart. Yogi knows all those guys very, very well, but now he's with the Pac-12 Network. He's got plenty to say about this Washington team, about this Michigan team, and he will break it all down for us coming up at 1 o'clock today. But we begin. Where else are we going to begin? It's finally here. Playoff week is here. Just the idea of, this whole weekend was just weird. The idea of a game against Cincinnati, and it didn't really mean anything. It didn't mean anything. Would you have wanted a W? Of course. Now, of course, there was somebody on Twitter that said, well, Chico, before you say it doesn't mean anything, I'll be real curious to see how they play in the first half against Houston. Does anybody think in their right mind that there's carryover from the Cincinnati? I mean, you're going to have different personnel. Yeah, in a perfect world, you want to win a game, but we all knew that this is about getting healthy, resting your guys, and getting ready for the wild card. I love the fact that the Browns are the first game. They could have played Saturday 4:30, which is what they got. Saturday at 4:30 in Houston. They could have played Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night. And I remember thinking, like, if it's going to be Monday night, I'm going to lose my mind because I can't wait that long. I just can't. You think about the Cincinnati game not really meaning anything, and then having to wait all this week and then Saturday, then Sunday, and then all day Monday. Oh, my gosh. I think we would have been zombies by then. So the Browns get the early window in Houston against C.J. Stroud and the Texans. And not a homer call at all. You people know me. If I feel, otherwise, I've been very, very open to sharing it, even if it means criticism. But I feel very confident in this matchup. I mean, C.J. Stroud is playing at a whole nother level. C.J. Stroud, for comparison's sake here, I think C.J. Stroud, what he did yesterday was kind of like watching Michael Penix against Texas. Like, C.J. Stroud is a baller. And the last time the Browns played the Houston Texans, I don't have to tell you, but I will, Case Keenum played. Nothing against Case Keenum, but he's not C.J. Stroud. Let me say this, though. The reason I like this matchup for the Browns is that we are talking about a secondary. I don't think any secondary boasts what the Browns can boast when it goes 1 through 3 as far as the corners. And obviously Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson Jr. and Greg Newsome. Your safeties, even the young guys have played well. DeAnthony Bell and Ronnie Hickman have played well. But those three stud, and I do mean stud, DBs, now it's a whole different element for CJ and the Houston Texans. Because in addition to, obviously trying to get guys open. And look, Nico Collins, great wide receiver. They're not going to have Tank Dell. He's done for the year. But it's going to be a lot tougher sledding. One would think, I think, for Nico Collins and company to get separation, to get open. And then, by the way, while that's going on with that man coverage, guess who is also rested and is also ready to go and is also going to be on turf? Myles Garrett. I mean, the Houston offensive line is, they're okay. But if you're talking about guys, if you're talking about C.J. Stroud having to wait because guys aren't breaking free, and it would stand to reason. I'm not saying they're not going to get a few of those, but it would stand to reason that arrested Denzel Ward, arrested Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome and all those guys, having those guys on that back end rested. And then, of course, Myles Garrett in the front line. You might get Obo back for this one. Who knows? And he might be ready to go. JOK is going to be rested. I mean, these are all, really, really fast and dominant players. And it's going to be a huge difference from what C.J. Stroud saw on Sunday. Now, that said, C.J. Stroud, you go back to that. I said it reminded me of Penix last week against Texas. You know what else yesterday reminded me of as far as C.J. Stroud, or Saturday, what it reminded me of as C.J. Stroud was when the Buckeyes played Georgia in that playoff game, and C.J. Stroud, it was like, everybody was looking for some knock, they didn't. And then C.J. Stroud came out, and, he took one of the best defenses in the country. Well, he's not accurate enough. Well, he doesn't process information, always a favorite. And he just completely debunked those myths. Now, he, as great as he was against Georgia, he would still have to fight an uphill battle because somebody, gets on their soapbox and they start saying that C.J. Stroud isn't what we all think he is, and so then that narrative takes off, and that's what he had to deal with. Right now, Houston's laughing all the way to the bank. Matter of fact, boom, there's a chance. A lot of people felt that if Houston ended up winning the AFC South, and they did, and in part because Jacksonville lost, but make no mistake, they won the AFC South. Many thought that was the road that would have to be taken by DeMeco Ryans to be the coach of the year. That if the Texans win the AFC South, nobody thought these guys were going to be in the postseason, let alone winning the AFC South, hosting a playoff game against the Browns. As much as, and DeMeco Ryans has been amazing. Last week we talked to Sean Pendergast, and I mean, look, he's been outstanding. DeMeco has. Let's not lose sight of Kevin. I mean, I know. I mean, it is a hell of an accomplishment to win your division and to go from where they were. But we are talking about a team, you count Jeff Driscoll in the equation on Sunday, 5 quarterbacks this season. The quarterback you're leaning on is 38, going on 39, I think, in about 2 weeks, less than actually in a week. He'll be 39 years old, I think, on the 16th of January, and Joe Flacco. You've had your offensive line banged up. You've had everybody banged up. Yet here are the Browns, kind of a sexy team for many that pick, for many that prognosticate. Many are saying, watch out for that Browns team, and it's legitimate. I think it's legitimate. So I don't know. Look, if DeMeco Ryans gets it, God bless him. I just think that maybe a bit of a homer call. I don't know. I think Kevin Stefanski absolutely deserves it. But I do know that all I heard was if Ryans and the Texans win the South, it might very well be Ryans' award to lose.
Yeah, Chico, these are the 2 Cinderella stories of the NFL right now. I mean, the Texans coming back from a 3-win season, and this improbable run, and a lot in part thanks to kind of what happened with the Jaguars' monumental collapse. But with the Browns, it just feels like unparalleled adversity in terms of the amount of injuries, not just at that quarterback position, but everywhere, Chico, everywhere. The Browns were decimated all season long with season-ending injuries, guys being tossed on IR. And so I think you've got to give it to Stefanski, in my opinion.
Cinderella for different reasons. Obviously,
Yes.
The Browns came in, but by the time Deshaun goes out, and then you realize, well, okay, DTR is not going to be the answer, but he gets hurt anyway. PJ Walker, we'll talk to Terry Pluto at 12:30. He kind of went into detail this Sunday about how this whole thing really did materialize as far as Joe Flacco becoming a Brown. But even Flacco coming to the Browns, okay, that's only part of the equation. The other huge part of this equation is that Joe Flacco feels, I mean, these two, Flacco and Kevin Stefanski, are like 2 peas in a pod. I mean, they get each other. This is exactly the offense that Joe Flacco is comfortable running. Hell, Kevin Stefanski feels since he's taken over the Browns, he feels more confident with a 38-year-old quarterback who he's only had for about a little over a month. He feels more confident calling any play whatsoever on the play sheet with him than he ever did with any quarterback in the past. Now, I know it wasn't a laundry list of great quarterbacks, but yeah, even Baker. He was a little hesitant on certain plays. But with Flacco, it's like he has full trust of his quarterback. Now, he's going to have to – this is where we start to – now that we're in the playoffs, now that it's single elimination, you realize they're going to have to be smarter. He's going to have to be smarter with the football. But at the same time, I don't want that to get in the way. None of us want it to get in the way of Joe Flacco's playmaking ability, which he's always had, but he has definitely put on display since coming to the Cleveland Browns.
You talk about turnovers, Chico. I heard an amazing stat this morning about how, so the Bengals, in terms of season-long turnover differential, came into yesterday with plus 8.
Plus 8.
Right? The Browns, with their record at 11-5.
I heard the same thing you did.
-8. That's unreal. Just improbable. What the Browns are doing right now feels unprecedented in so many different ways. Honestly, like at this point, I'm still expecting Joe Flacco to take some shots. He's a gunslinger. I'm still expecting there to be a turnover here or there. But I'm also hoping that he's still able to continue to have some success on a fair amount of those throws as he has been here heading into this week.
Yeah, how many times does a team lead the league in turnovers? And yet, it defies everything. Every law, every commandment of football, it defies everything. It's one thing to be like, you know what? We're in the upper half. That's not good. It's another thing to lead the league. And yet, here they are. Now, why is that? Well, because in addition to turning the ball over, he's making plenty more plays, and you've got a defense. And I think that's why, ultimately, why do we feel confident with this Browns team? Yeah, it's Joe Flacco to a degree, but in large part, it's this defense. It's those three DBs that I mentioned. Like C.J. Stroud is a great quarterback, but C.J. Stroud has a very, very big challenge in front of him. Okay, the Browns are not the Indianapolis Colts. They are not the. This is one of the best defensive backfields in the game, the best corner room, I think, in the game. And then you pair that with Myles Garrett, and then you pair that with Jim Schwartz, and C.J. Stroud is going to have to be on his game. And those receivers, if they're not creating separation, which is not easy to do with those guys in the backfield for the Browns, now all of a sudden C.J. Stroud is coming under fire. So it's going to be a very, very big challenge for C.J. in that offense.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that this is the toughest test that C.J. will have faced all season.
Yeah.
Honestly, Chico, I feel a little bit like Brady Quinn's sister in the Fiesta Bowl with this one because, I'm married to Browns fandom.
We can't have that.
This is my Buckeye brother, though, who's shattering. He is groundbreaking, Chico, because he's shattering the stigma of OSU quarterbacks not being able to find success in the NFL.
Okay, somebody has to help me with this here because, look, I love C.J. Stroud too, and I'm rooting like hell for him, but not here. And not even a little bit. Boom. I have a vision of you, Bohm, being in that little booth, engineering the game on Saturday late afternoon, and if C.J. Stroud hits Nico Collins for a bomb, you're going to be excited. I don't even want to think about it, but I have to because I get the sense it's a possibility, and that is just your Browns fan card may need to be revoked.
I don't want to think about it either, Chico. This is a nightmare scenario for me. I told you on Friday, this is the matchup that I do not want to happen, and damn it, the Jags crapped the bed, and here we are, Chico, and here I am, conflicted, because I might feel a little bit excited if C.J. Stroud throws a touchdown. I'm sorry. I'm proud of him.
Let me say this. I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the candor. Obviously, I'm a fellow Buckeye, so but there will be absolutely zero excitement level. Now, I might say, wow, that was a hell of a play, but you're saying there might be legit excitement. This is the playoffs, Bohm. This isn't even a regular season matchup. This is you win and you advance. You lose and you're done. I can't wrap my mind around the fact that you might be celebrating a little bit C.J. Stroud making big plays for Houston. That's grounds for immediate termination, Bohm.
Let me be clear, Chico. I want the Browns to win, okay? I just don't want to see C.J. Stroud in his NFL playoff debut go out there and crap the bed. I don't want to see that happen to him.
Do we have any comments on? I see some comments on YouTube. Anybody? Because I'm curious what. Again, I like CJ as well. I'm a Buckeyes fan, but no. I want him to be picked off. I do want him to play. I want the Browns to harass him for 3 hours straight. I want Myles Garrett. I don't want him hurt, but I want Myles Garrett to just frustrate the living hell out of him. I want him seeing ghosts. I want him throwing footballs before guys break open and Denzel Ward jumping the play. I want all of that.
I hope that this Browns game winds up being the adversity that helps him, that's so rough on him, that helps him, it helps him win an MVP one day.
Wow. Well, I don't quite, and again, I know your allegiance, but this is totally different.
Chico, honestly, I think I would be upset if the Browns lost. Okay, but that, like, CJ Stroud advancing, hopefully
don't tell
it's not
me
a bad
that. Don't give me a silver
consolation.
lining. Yeah, no. There is no way in hell. Somebody help me out. This is where if we had phones, I know they'd be lit up. There is no silver lining. Now, if they advance, and they would if Houston were to win, and then, okay, you want to root for them the next game, that's fine. But you're not having any ounce of enthusiasm or excitement if he makes a big play on Saturday afternoon. And you sure as hell, if this season, especially the way this season has gone for the Cleveland Browns, there is no way in hell, Bohm, that this season, if it were to end on Saturday, that anybody but you would have any kind of silver lining or, consolation prize. No, absolutely, positively not.
I feel a little bit like Kendall Roy in Succession.
Yes, and you should feel like Kendall Roy.
He's supposed to basically sell himself out for the company and take the fall for everything, and then he goes out and accuses his dad of being the guy who knows everything.
You know
and
what
his dad at the end.
You know what his dad's famous line was in that he said over and over and over and over again.
Yes,
that's kind of what I want to say to you.
But
right
his
now.
face in the end, in that moment, he was proud of him, Chico. He was proud of him stepping up, and I think I would feel pride for CJ Stroud making plays against this elite Browns defense.
Okay, all right, good. I can't take any more of that. It's starting to.
I'm not saying I would love the Browns losing, okay? I'm just saying I would be proud of my guy.
To me, it's just, no, I can't do that. All right. Elsewhere, again, the matchups are set. We know the Browns and the Houston Texans will be going Saturday afternoon, 4:30. As I said earlier to start the show, I love that window. I don't want to have to wait. Obviously, if they win, you kind of relax and watch the rest of the games and do all that. If they lose, it's going to be a miserable weekend, right? But I know myself. I could not wait. There is no way I could make it through all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and all day Monday if let's say they played the latest game possible on Monday night. Even Sunday would be tough. Now that it's here. Okay, the Steelers make the postseason. Goodness gracious, Jacksonville. I mean, I know you're banged up, but man, you talk about teams that had a disappointing season as far as expectations. The Saints are one of those teams in the NFC. Jacksonville, absolutely one of those teams in the AFC. No doubt about it. I mean, at least with the Jets, okay, they lost their quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and you understand that to some degree. But how about this? Every AFC North team had a winning record. 3 of the 4 AFC North teams make the postseason. Steelers are going to travel to Buffalo, the 7-2 seed. So the Steelers make it in. They're the final seed. All that talk about Mike Tomlin and should he be – now he makes the postseason. My God, what is Pony and company going to do? I mean, now he's in the playoffs. I think a guy like him roots for him to lose because he wants him gone, which is beyond me. But the Steelers get in, but think about this stat. This is only, I believe it's the second time this has happened, and the last time it happened where an entire division had a winning record. Do you want to take a guess, Boom? The year that it was that an entire division went above 500, had a winning record. No losing record in the entire division, no 500, just all winning record.
Did it happen in the post-99 era?
No.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Way back.
I'm going to say 1984.
1935.
Ho, ho, ho.
Yes. You're like going back to like Jay Berwanger days. I don't even think he'd won the Heisman yet.
I don't even know who that is.
His first Heisman Trophy winner. Man, oh man. Yeah. So, I mean, all 14, no question, the AFC North. I think if there was a question, we like to ponder that. You like to throw out, the NFC. What about the NFC West? I'll say this, the NFC West stronger than we thought because of the Los Angeles Rams. Because there's two teams to me that I didn't really have much hope for going into the year. The Houston Texans were one, and God bless them. They are where they are. DeMeco Ryans an incredible job. The other one is the LA Rams. I thought the Rams were going to be terrible this year. And, now you've got them in the playoffs taking on the Lions. By the way, in the NFC, how many different storylines? You've got Green Bay and Dallas. So Mike McCarthy's facing his old team. Lions and Rams. Matthew Stafford's going to Detroit as a Rams quarterback to play in Detroit in a playoff game. I mean, that's, unbelievable stuff.
Pick 6 is going to be fun this week.
Yeah, it really is going to be fun. Eagles and Bucks, and the Eagles, oh my gosh. They're talking about Nick Sirianni might be on the hot seat if they go one and done. Like, it's gotten that bad. Hot takes galore. But, can you imagine? This guy got to the Super Bowl last year, loses to KC. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of a hanger. They never quite get it. They never quite get back on track. Some of it's injury. But now the locker room's fractured. Now A.J. Brown might be out for this game. Jalen Hurts has been banged up. What if the Eagles lose to the Buccaneers? Your boy, Baker Mayfield. If the Eagles lose to the Buccaneers and Nick Sirianni is all of a sudden on the hot seat? Wow.
Chico, this one, both of these teams are so shaky. I wouldn't know how to pick this game. And the Eagles of all teams in the league, boy, did they stumble into the playoffs. They just, they got off to such a hot start that they basically relied on that to find their way in. And especially with this Jalen Hurts injury, I am pretty pessimistic about their chances. But Baker Mayfield, what he did, now granted he was hurt. Yeah. He's not going to have a lot of time to recover. But what he was unable to do against the Carolina Panthers was just a dreadful performance. Now, he took care of the football. He didn't have any extremely errant throws or anything, but it was, I don't know how to feel about that game, Chico. It's one of the toughest games here that I think in terms of just picking who I think is better, because both of them feel like kind of flukes to me.
Well, and the Eagles, okay, so now in addition to, I'm guessing A.J. Brown's out. I don't know for sure. I haven't heard that definitively, but A.J. Brown went down in the game. But really, what's been talked about for the last month is how the Eagles' defense, and again, we need to bring this up. They lost both their coordinators last year. So they lost Shane Steichen on the offensive side of the ball to Indianapolis. They lost Jonathan Gannon, Cleveland native, to the Arizona Cardinals. And this whole weird, Matt Patricia is basically calling the defense, but it's not his defense. They're in real trouble. I don't care what happened last year. I don't care that you have Jalen Hurts. They are in real trouble. But the idea that Nick Sirianni could be on the hot seat is crazy. Already some firings, by the way. Arthur Smith gone. Ron Rivera gone in D.C. I know we've had this conversation before, and we're going to talk to Terry Pluto here in just a moment, but I know we've had this conversation before about Bill Belichick. And Belichick, look, best ever do it, and I don't think anybody has any problem saying that. But if you're Washington, and not necessarily if you're Washington or Carolina, if you're David Tepper. You'd like David Tepper's money, but you don't want to be David Tepper. But if you're a fan of those teams, do you really want Belichick? As great as the career is, you don't know how much longer he's got. You kind of want a young guy to, install everything and get everybody going in the right direction. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. All right. Also interesting has been this incredible Browns run, and they are in the postseason, and now the schedule is out. Saturday, 4:30. Terry Pluto, great columnist, longtime columnist and author, joining us with Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Terry, all I will say is I'm glad they got Saturday, and even more so that they got the early window, because if it would happen to be Monday, I wouldn't have been able to make it through all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday waiting for this game.
Yeah, the advantage is I think they feel that the Browns in Houston just don't have the zip that they want for national TV, later on. So we didn't get the late night game or whatever. But those two fan bases are really rabid. It'd be interesting at the end of all those wild card things to take a look and see what brought in the most. But I'm excited like you are to just have them play and see what happens. It's just such an improbable season.
Going into the weekend, did you have everybody seem to have their rankings of I'd rather play this team and my least favorite team to play would be this? Where was Houston on that list as far as the Colts and Jacksonville?
When I'm watching that game Saturday night, and I'm thinking they're going to end up playing Houston, because it's kind of like, whether it's Watson used to be the quarterback there, Strauss from Ohio State, they're probably the best of the three teams. And it just seems like that's what it's going to be with the Browns all the time. Whatever is going to be the harder road, that's the one they're going to be on. When you think about this year, I was talking with my boss, David Campbell, about this. Who leads the Browns in touchdowns?
Who leads
Kareem Hunt.
Yes, that's right.
He's another guy who was like looking for work. I will run the ball for food, holding a sign to come out. I mean, Joe Flacco, I'll throw passes for food, holding a sign. And then if you really, Dustin Hopkins was on the verge of being cut by the Chargers when the Browns traded for him. So you talk about a guy that leads the team in touchdowns. Flacco has just been the shooting star of this remarkable story. And then you have Hopkins. They've won 5 games, I think, in the last 3 minutes on his field goals, and he hasn't missed any at the end.
Yeah, I'll say this, Terry, a lot to feel good about. But such a great story that Dustin Hopkins was this year, and now we're coming down to the critical time of it's the postseason. You win, you advance, you lose, you go home. Nothing against Riley Patterson, but man,
Sure.
that does make me pretty nervous. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and also given his history, that's part of the reason the Chargers let him go. His history of hamstring injuries and groin injuries. I just wish these guys would say, I'm not a football player, I'm a kicker. I'm not a football player, I'm a quarterback. I mean, really, I remember, how Baker Mayfield originally hurt his shoulder. He threw an interception and tried to tackle a guy.
Yep.
Just get out of the way. And it doesn't mean that you're not macho or whatever. The problem with whether you're a kicker or you're a quarterback, you're perhaps the hardest person to replace in the middle of that game.
Terry Pluto joining us here, Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Browns taking on the Houston Texans this Saturday, 4:30 kick down in Houston. What gives you, if I were to say the one thing that gives you the most confidence that the Browns can come away winners on Saturday afternoon, what would it be?
They've been fighting adversity all year. The coaching staff is very together. When you look at Schwartz, has been to Super Bowls. Bubba Ventrone is, I think, established himself as a really good special teams coach. Kevin Stefanski now is a veteran coach, 4 years as a head coach. That's a long time in the NFL. And so I like the coaching staff. Then you have a quarterback who's 5-0 in wild card games. That's what Flacco is. And the fact that, Houston really has not been there, whether it's D'Amico Ryan as a head coach or CJ Stroud or any of those guys. The tough thing just for me is the Browns have just not been very good on the road, especially their defense. And the Dome is going to put a lot of accent on speed. In the past, that would really bother me, but the Browns defense is pretty fast.
Yes.
So I feel good about that. Stroud's stats are remarkable. We're 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. He's playing like with poise And if you watched him in that game, that was noisy in Indianapolis and all that, and he just kept his team together. They hung in there. He's going to be a real challenge. My fear always with Flacco is one day he's just going to throw those 3 picks and the magic dust is going to go away. Because right now his view is, throw an interception, throw 2, don't worry, we'll throw 3 or 4 the other way.
Right.
It's kind of like the Indians of the 90s when they would make errors. And no, don't worry about it. We get to bat too. And so there's so much fun. This team to me is just fun. And I admit when Watson went out, it kind of took out that element that fractured the fan base. And then Flacco comes in, this outrageous story of a guy sitting on his couch. Look, this guy must have been getting up at 6 a.m. to go to the health club, you had to be in tremendous shape to walk in the middle of an NFL season and start throwing 40 passes a game. Are you kidding me? He was doing more than playing catch with his brother or whatever it was and throwing the kids around. I'm sure that's, as a friend of mine said, accurate but not true. Yeah, that's accurate, but the truth is probably he was up and staying in shape early in the morning to be able to do what he's done.
Yeah, and I caught that in your column over the weekend, and it was well put. Yeah, I think a lot of times these legends continue to grow, and it's like, yeah, he was just on the couch watching soaps, eating Cheetos, and he had a personal trainer, he was working out every day, and that's what a lot of those guys do.
I tell you, and that's hard to do when you're an older guy. Training camp comes and goes, nobody wants you. Quarterbacks get hurt, nobody wants you. You're probably looking, going, I never even heard of this guy, and they don't even want to bring me in for the practice squad. And to keep getting up every morning or whatever he did to stay in shape, that's tremendous self-discipline.
Terry, one of the things that it's the thing, quite honestly, is as much as, Joe Flacco has been a great story, and also along with, Amari Cooper, like I think back as a Browns fan being old enough to enjoy the 80s, like you felt good about those teams. Sure, you felt good about Bernie, but you felt good about those teams because that was a solid defensive team, solid defensive unit, guys that could make plays on the back end and up front. And I feel that way about this group. Like as great as Stroud has been, and Nico Collins obviously had another big game. Now all of a sudden it's a different story when you've got, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson Jr., and, CJ's kind of waiting for those guys to break open. Might not happen that often. And all of a sudden you've got Miles and company up front. I just feel like that if I had to pinpoint a reason why I feel confident about Saturday, it's on the defensive side of the ball.
Yes, because I guess the reason I mentioned my concern about Flacco throwing the interceptions, because it's almost like his defense is like a given.
Yeah.
They're probably going to hold him under 25 points or something. You just don't. I mean, if you look at some of the games that were sort of cataclysmic for the Browns, it's because the offense kept letting the other team score touchdowns. I mean, when they lost to the Steelers, Deshaun Watson literally gave them 14 points. And there have been other times, too. I forgot what game it was. I think it was even the game where DTR ended up starting. Probably weren't going to win that game, but they kept giving Baltimore the ball like on the Cleveland 18-yard line or something. That kind of stuff. So I'm with you. That's the key part that gives them a tremendous opportunity. Along with, I'm not going to underestimate the experience of the coaching staff, and I'll throw Bill Callahan in with that because his office is right by Stefanski's. If you'll notice, sometimes a press conference, Stefanski will mention that, oh yeah, Callahan designed that running play, or we've been doing that. So you have Callahan, who's a decorated offensive line coach, along with Schwartz, and then Bubba Ventrone's kind of a hot young coaching name, and I'm sure there's some other guys who I'm not aware of their background that are position coaches. I'm confident.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the coaching staff and not just Kevin, because I'm going back again to, and I know you can go back further than I can, but like those 80s teams, I mean, Marty had great assistants that went on to be great head coaches. Hell, Belichick, when he first got here, you had, Cowher, and you had, all those guys. I think about all of the great coaches that have come through here, all of the great staffs that have come through here, but this one has been pretty, since they've come back in the league in 99, I don't think there's any question, up and down, not just Kevin Stefanski, up and down. This has to be the best coaching staff they've had.
they've been able to recruit them, and it helps now that Stefanski's in his fourth year, because in the past, one of the reasons they couldn't get top assistants is a head coach couldn't even last more than 2 years.
Right.
And you have to work in the human element. And Jimmy Haslam was always willing to pay these guys. Let's be and Randy Lerner also. But they would think, man, I'm going to move my family to Cleveland, and it could be one and done or two and done. I mean, they've had some big time guys come through here in the past. Norv Turner was here, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some others in terms of assistants. But they hardly lasted because they just kept blowing it up. So that's been a thing. And I do think also this year is a testament to stability, where rather than fire Stefanski and everything after last year, which could have happened no matter what they say, they came back with Barry and Stefanski, and they've been able to weather these various storms that have hit on the injury front. And when we talk about the front office bringing these guys in off the couch, or the way that they keep changing game plans, that's a combination of good coaching and good player personnel, and them working together instead of in the past when things go wrong, they start pointing fingers of blame. The infamous internal discord is that was the line that Haslam once used. I think that's when they fired Todd. It was Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson, and all that. I remember sitting there going, I wrote it down, internal discord. They said it like 3 times, and it was like, okay. So the days of internal discord are fortunately over. And by the way, everybody used to make fun of Deep Podesta, but he's part of that deal there. And my guess is he was probably encouraging Jimmy not to blow the thing up.
When we talk about Kevin Stefanski, just a few more minutes again with Terry Pluto, Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. When we talk about Kevin Stefanski this year, I think it's okay to say, because of course you did have people on the other end, oh my gosh, week 3 should be fired or this or that. You get that with every fan base. But the reality is, Terry, we don't really know, and heck, Kevin doesn't even know, and Barry and Haslam don't even know how a team and how Kevin specifically is going to react to an adverse situation. And I mean, nobody could have in their right mind thought of this, that, 5 quarterbacks and all the injuries. So you don't know until you have it. You don't ever want to think about having that kind of adversity. But to me, this is where Kevin Stefanski we got the answers that we were looking for. Like, can he, in a situation, we saw it a little bit in 2020, so I don't want to say like we never saw it before. But to do what he did this year and keep all of these guys, even Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins was talking about it after one game.
Well, in 20, he had the advantage of not being Freddie Kitchens. I'm very serious. You come in after that, disorganized, seemed like he emotionally, on edge, that. So just coming in, seeing calm and poised, even if he's sort of faking it as a head coach the first time, worked out. Of course, then, stuff hit with Baker and Odell and then Deshaun, and it was a real trial for him. So he weathered through that, and it's not easy to keep changing not just quarterbacks, but total styles of play. I mean, if you were to look at the offense they're running now compared to what they were running with Deshaun or even DTR, it's not even close.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, I'm glad you did before Amari Cooper. This guy, I'm trying to think, I'm like Warfield, you go back into maybe that whole crew in the late 80s with some of those guys. He certainly would have fit in and maybe even be better than that. Certainly they've had nothing close to him since they've come back in 99. And now they run this play action stuff. Let's throw it downfield. And by the way, Flacco is a great play fake.
Oh,
I mean,
amazing.
I get confused watching it. I'm watching the running back or something. It really is. It is profound, and that's the type of offense Stefanski never said, but he grew up in that Kubiak Shanahan system. That's what he likes. Under center, play fakes, do a lot of running game, then fire it downfield. But he's had to adjust because that's not Deshaun's game at all.
You mentioned Amari Cooper. One of the things I've always enjoyed over the years reading you, and whether it be the Guardians, whether it be the Browns, the Cavs, like every fan, you have favorite players.
Mm-hmm.
Amari Cooper to me, and I think you wrote about it this weekend, and I was talking about it last week on the show. Amari Cooper, I've always loved his game. Alabama, and he's the same type of guy that he was at Alabama that he is now in the NFL. You just he doesn't care about all of the, give it to Joe Flacco's been great, and this guy's been great. You don't get that everywhere in the NFL, especially with that position.
Yeah, the receiver thing. I mean, I remember when they traded for him, Andrew Berry told me, just for background, he said, this guy's like Nick Chubb. He's all business or whatever. And if you notice, when they do open up, whether you're talking about Chubb or Cooper, it's when you ask him about someone else. Then all of a sudden, Cooper, it's nice. I appreciate being a Pro Bowl. What about Njoku? I am so happy for David. All he went through, he went on to speech. It's like, he gives a speech. And I remember Chubb would be that way about Kareem Hunt or Jerome Ford. And it's just how you can't fake it. It's just how they're wired. And that really helps. And that way too, when Amari Cooper comes over to Flacco, wherever, he goes, man, I'm open. You're listening. Because he's not saying he's open on every play.
Right.
And he's not showing me up. He's just saying, man, we could just throw it. I remember Flacco said one game that Cooper said to him, I'm 6'3" and 220 or whatever he is. He goes, the guy's covering me is 5'10". Just throw it over them. Just throw it over. I'll get it. And he did.
Last thing for you, but I'd be remiss if we didn't mention a little Cavaliers. They've, speaking of adversity, I mean, injuries to Evan Mobley and injuries to Darius Garland, and speaking of different styles and having to adjust, JB Bickerstaff, for a guy that gets a lot of heat in this town, and I know we've had discussions on this, I think he's been proven to be a very, adapting coach, and now it's small ball. I know you're not a fan of jacking up threes all the time, but as you covered this weekend, it's, there's kind of a method to that madness, right?
Yes, there is. And also JB's clarifying of when you can roll out the numbers, you're averaging like 20 or 30 more passes per game than anybody else in the NBA during the last 11 games, where they're 8-3 since those guys went down. Is like, you can't just say there's one guy taking it down and firing up a stupid three. You still see it once in a while. But they also brought in some guys, especially when you look at George Niang and Strus. These are really good basketball players. Merrill has been what they had before. Merrill, they had him before as a standstill shooter. Now they got him running off picks, and that's the difference. He's getting open. He's got that quick release, and so he's harder to cover. And he looks more athletic. Craig Porter didn't play much the other night, but he's been a revelation. So you have basically a couple of guys they picked up for nothing, much like the Browns, and then in Porter and Merrill, and then you have some nice free agent pickups. I mean, granted, Strus was a sign and trade, but that's what it was. And they just seem to be. And then Jared Allen, Jared is such a nice guy.
Yep.
Part of him is like, okay, I'll defer to this person or that person. And they're like, Jared, you're like a career 63% shooter. Shoot it. And it's not just dunking. Shoot it. You're 4 feet from the basket. Don't throw it out to the guy for the corner three. Make the shot. And he's starting to do that. And, he feels empowered. So we'll see how far this goes. But that's why I think they've defied a lot of people who were concerned on where this was going to go. Because they did change it, but they've got good basketball players. They have unselfish players. And look, JB's gone from 22 to 44 to 51 wins without a lot of diva NBA drama. That is not as easy as people think. Look at some of these teams, even the Spurs, like Wembanyama, they've won 5 games. I mean, they're a long way from where. And they got Popovich.
Yeah.
You could be bad and stay bad for a long time in the NBA, and the Cavs got out of that pretty quick.
Yeah, and just to close it out, Jared Allen, as we know, after that series last year against the Knicks, and a lot of people, but you're right. I mean, he has battled, and his last 7 games, I was looking at this, 21, 22 points and like 16, 17 rebounds. He's been unbelievable.
It's like 5 assists, too. Yeah. 5 assists.
Unreal.
And the big thing there is, you can make a big mistake when the first time a younger team goes to the playoffs and gets blown out and act like the sky is falling. You can, and you have that color, everything about that. And the NBA, that's one thing I do hate about the NBA, because it all like, well, wait till the playoffs, wait till the playoffs. I mean, it's like, by the way, the Lakers won the play-in tournament. How'd you feel about that? So they're trying to, no, it's like, enjoy the ride. I like watching the Cavs, and I have liked watching them the last few years because they play, they try to defend, and they seem to, you don't have a lot of garbage going on with them, and they were winning more games than they're losing. And you look at it, it's a young team with a shot to do something. You give them a couple more years in the playoffs before you hit the detonation flip.
Sure is fun to be a Cleveland fan right about now. Terry, appreciate your time on such short notice. Enjoy the weekend. Going to be fun, and hopefully we can talk more about this here coming up soon. Thank you, bud.
Thank you, Chico. Glad we could work it out.
All right. Again, Terry Pluto, the great Terry Pluto, great columnist, longtime columnist and author. And, it's funny because a lot of these, you go back to that New York series, which I know a lot of you are, it's scarred many of you, but we really, even not that long ago, Donovan Mitchell, and, well, we got to look to trade it. Donovan Mitchell doesn't appear to be, other than having friends in New York, he doesn't appear to be looking to get the hell out of Dodge. Let this season play out. And, they've had a lot of adversity. Who's to say that when the playoffs do roll around and all of a sudden you've got Garland back healthy, Mobley back healthy, that these minutes that, Donovan Mitchell now playing more of the point guard position, and guys are moving around, and it's not just like, jacking up threes. Okay, you're putting up a lot of threes, but you're moving and you're, you're setting screens and you're looking for that extra guy, playing unselfish basketball. Who's to say that when those guys come back healthy, now it's not going to be easy because you're playing great teams and you don't have two of your best players. But what if they get these guys back healthy, the minutes that these guys like Craig Porter and others wouldn't have received without guys going down, now all of a sudden, you've got a real complete team and a team that has a ton of depth, which, again, last year, not even close. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, a few more thoughts on the Browns and the Texans, and then we're going to shift our focus at the top of the hour. Tonight, all the marbles. The Michigan Wolverines, 14-0. The Washington Huskies, 14-0. My good buddy Yogi Roth, Pac-12 analyst, former assistant coach under Pete Carroll at USC. He will drop by at 1 o'clock, and we'll talk about this big matchup tonight. More of the Chico Borman Show to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. Chico Borman Show as we close out hour one on this Monday. Coming up top of the hour, Yogi Roth, college football analyst, the biggie. I think every year, I know we say it I can't wait for this matchup, but I really can't wait for this matchup. You've got this high-flying, passing attack and a quarterback that is playing just easily at the top of his game and with the utmost confidence. A great trio of wide receivers led by Odunze. And then you got Michigan, who, that defense is legit, and that defense on the back end is very legit. It's going to be a great, great matchup. So we'll talk to Yogi in just a moment. I back to the defense for a second. I know oftentimes I do go back to the 80s because that's kind of my wheelhouse in terms of, being a Browns fan and growing up as a Browns fan. But really, that was the reason you felt so good about those teams and so confident. Yes, you felt, and they had a great offense too, led by Bernie. You had two running backs, mid-'80s. They each had 1,000 yards, Biner and Mack, and you had, Webster Slaughter, Brian Brennan, obviously Ozzie Newsome. So those teams were loaded, but ultimately what it came down to is you felt good and great that, the defense is going to carry you. The defense, you've never felt that way with a Browns team. Even in 2020 when they made the playoffs, that was a really exciting offense. You had Baker, you had obviously a healthy Nick Chubb, and they were an offense that was humming, but they knew that they had to. Otherwise, they were going to lose games because the defense just wasn't up to that level. This defense is, even on paper, even with all the injuries they've had there, this defense has, been able to overcome that. But then you even go a step further, and I think this mini bye, I really do think it's going to be something that we look back on, the Browns look back on, and you really hear them talk about how much it helped them. Like Amari Cooper, we're already hearing is feeling so much better, and he feels good. And Grant Delpit probably won't be able to get back for this game, but who knows if they can win against Houston. Delpit could be available. That would be a huge, huge get as well. But ultimately, like I said, that secondary, C.J. Stroud is outstanding. Nico Collins is outstanding. But when you're talking about Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson and Denzel Ward, wow. That's a lot to ask. So we shall see how it goes, but looking forward to it. Of course, tomorrow on the show, we got the Bold Ball Breakdown. My buddy Nick Shook, NFL.com, and NFL Network will join me from noon until 1, and we'll be breaking this one down, all the way and looking at all the matchups as now the playoffs are here. Kind of interesting that the Chiefs and the Dolphins, folks have to find a way if you don't have the Peacock network. Like if you have DirecTV, I don't think you can. It's just, come on, man. NFL play. It's the postseason. Everybody should be able to watch the postseason, I feel like. Anyway. Real quick, too, on the Cavaliers. Terry and I were talking about that. Cavs winning 3 in a row, beat San Antonio last night. Their next game is Thursday against Brooklyn. Bohm, you weren't aware of this either. In Paris. I didn't. I had no idea. They play in Paris against Brooklyn. Then they return home, and I think Monday. I'm pretty sure Monday, then they are back home at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, and they take on the Chicago Bulls. So it has been interesting. All right. Well, without further ado, look at it. Look at my guy right there. It's been a while since I've talked to this guy. I mentioned it in the first hour. Yogi Roth. I had a chance to meet him years and years ago. Thankfully, the Hoderney brothers, Pat and Chris Hoderney. Chris Hoderney still listens to the show, chimes in on occasion, and they introduced me to a guy named Yogi Roth, who they said walked on at Pitt and was an assistant coach under Pete Carroll. And man, did I love conversations with Yogi Roth, Pac-12 Network, and now with Washington undefeated, taking on Michigan tonight, undefeated. Who better to break this down? But before we get into any of that, Yoke, how you been, man?
Man, I'm great. It's beautiful to see you and follow you as well. I'm a fan, bro. So I can remember doing my first interview with you back in probably '05, '06, something like that. To now at your stops and how you built your audience and your craft, man. So it is an honor to be on here with you. And how about technology? We could see each other. How lucky are we with Houston as a backdrop behind me, pouring rain here. But how am I? I'm great. I got 2 healthy kids. I got an awesome wife. And I get to live my dream, which is being around major college football in a bunch of different capacities. And tonight I get to report on the final game in the Pac-12 as we know it in the national title. So it's an honor, man.
And he has a few books out already, but he's got a new book that we're going to be talking about here before the end of the interview. It's called 5-Star QB. Elite 11 is many people know if you watch ESPN, the kind of that quarterback camp. So Yogi is well versed on the QB position, coached it up at USC under Pete Carroll. All right, let's start here, Yogi. For those that aren't that familiar, I mean, now they're familiar because, hey, Washington's on the grandest stage. But for those that have just kind of been, I've been hearing Washington's, what is it that makes this Washington Husky team so special as we get ready for tonight's matchup?
It's amazing how many times I answer this question because I'm like, it's not like they were bad last year. They led the nation in passing. The guy who got Heisman votes, and for all those people in the Midwest, like they do play tackle, they don't play flag. Like it's a physical outfit as well. And I say it like in all sincerity. I'm like, this is a really good football team. In the preseason, if you recall, months ago, the Pac-12 was described by many as the most elite conference when you look at the top to bottom. And they went through that conference, which at one point had 9 teams ranked out of the 12 teams, and they won every game. Something that's never been done in the entirety of the Pac-12 when it went from 10 to 12 teams. I didn't think they would go undefeated. I'm one of the 4 people that picked them to win the league, so I guess you kind of take a little glory in that, maybe here on this victory lap. But with that said, they are the most creative, dynamic, explosive, and talented offense in America. Start with that. They've got first-round picks all over this offense. They've got next-level players all over this offense. They're a veteran-laden, player-led team with 9 sixth-year seniors due to COVID and giving people an extra year. For comparison, the other 3 teams in the CFP had 3 total 6th-year seniors. So UW has 9 of them. So it speaks to the veteran element of this team. Numerous guys could have transferred off of a 4-8 team 3 years ago. They just chose to stay with Kalen DeBoer. And then they also chose to come back this year to, as they've referenced all year, like the job's not done. And I think it's a real even-keeled team. Defensively, they've got an All-American edge rusher, Braylon Trice. They've got veteran linebackers that have played a lot of football. They've got, you could argue, the best cover corner in this game in Jabbar Muhammad, a transfer from Oklahoma State a year ago. So they're gifted, and they've got a coach who's only won, whether it's at a small NAIA school, 20 years ago, or at Fresno State, or here at Washington. So it's a confident group. It's the mature group, and it's a physical group. And they know they're playing the best team they faced all year, and vice versa. So it is cool, man. Like, we got 2 fresh brands in the final. You've got 2 totally different personalities with Jim Harbaugh's Michigan team and Kalen DeBoer's UW team, and you got talent. So I think we'll have an epic game. I hope it comes down to the final play, like last week. If we could be so lucky, there's 1 tick left, and the entire title is up for grabs.
If Michael Penix plays tonight the way he did against Texas, and I think I've heard many people say this, but I agree with it, so I'm going to say it too. As great as Michigan is, and they're physical and the defense great, if Penix is able to do to Michigan what he did to Texas and they did to Texas, then I think the championship is going to be going home with the Huskies. I know that's going to be a tall order, but how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dynamics, right? And everybody's been on the storylines. Does Michigan own the clock? Do they run the ball every snap other than 2, like they did against Penn State in the first half, I think? I don't know. If I'm Michigan, I'm going to create a little tempo on offense because I want to force Washington to have the same defensive personnel on the field and force them to line up and just defend the run. Will they do that? That'll be fun to track. For UW, they're not playing catch. they're playing quarterback. It is an NFL offense in terms of the creativity, the explosive nature of it, how there's always somebody open. It's not a pure progression system in terms of read one, if he's covered, go to two, if he's covered, go to three, and don't worry about the defense. Michael Penix Jr. is asked to identify defenders, read defenders, understand coverages. I mean, it's an awesome offense. So it'll come down to a handful of plays, man. I think if UW jumps on him early, it'll be compelling to watch. I think JJ McCarthy is a really talented quarterback. I was with him yesterday. You check out the interview on my YouTube channel. It was awesome about his approach to the craft. Using Elite 11 guys, you referenced that competition that we are part of. So he can throw them back in it if they have to, but that's not the DNA of Michigan. So I think in this one, it'll probably limited possessions for UW, but they're efficient. If they can remain efficient, don't turn it over, I think they'll be hoisting the trophy tonight.
So, you had the opportunity, and I've heard many great stories about this. It's in the book that you wrote with Pete called Win Forever, to coach under him at USC. You saw some incredible offenses. We all did. And you had a front row seat for that as quarterbacks coach and as assistant. Can you compare any of those offenses to what we're seeing from UW and what we will see tonight?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I was trying to comp really all year. Can I think of another trio of receivers as talented as Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk? You could say maybe LSU in 19, but even then, I think this group is a little bit more physical, a little bit more explosive, a little bit more dynamic. But when we were at SC, we had two guys. It was always Big Mike Williams and Kerry Colbert, or Steve Smith and Dwayne Jarrett, or Marquise Lee and Robert Woods. Like, it really never had three. And these UW offenses about 5 or 6 real NFL weapons at H-back, tight end. They go 5 deep at receiver. Dylan Johnson, he's going to go tonight. He's got a dramatic amount of touches out of the backfield in his entirety of his career at Mississippi State. And then here at Washington, of course, throughout this season. It's hard to comp. The one comp I will say is that Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator at Washington, his line is formations and motions are cheap, plays are expensive. Right? So formations and motions are cheap, plays are expensive. So you'll see them shift and motion a ton. The window dressing will be awesome, and it has been for all those that did watch Washington the last couple of years. And the plays are, to me, that's going to be the fun part of Michigan. Like, do they decipher the play in real time? Because they're going to be tasked to have great discipline, movement, shifting, receivers in the backfield, different snap counts, and that's where Washington thrives, man. And Penix is a maestro when it comes to that. So it'll be beautiful to watch. It's hard for me to comp an offense. It reminds me of Bama in 2020 with Sark and Devontae Smith and Mac Jones, just guys running wide open but catching the ball on the move. That's what UW does really well. Deep crossing routes, intermediate routes. They get a couple of those tonight. If they have 4+ explosives, I'd imagine Washington wins this thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up what Michael Penix is able to do. We know what he's able to do with his arm, with his legs, but obviously he's been so accurate and great with the deep ball and those receivers. But yeah, I like what you said about him being able to not just process this stuff, but okay, I'm seeing this pre-snap, and all I keep hearing from the Michigan side is that, oh, look out, Penix said these guys are going to disguise so much. Penix won't. He's had to do that all season. And I'm not saying to the level maybe that Michigan is going to do it. Who knows? But it's not like this is new for him, right?
Yeah, and I think that it'll be fun to see what Michigan does. There is an element of them last week against Alabama that we didn't see a ton of this season because they saw the most dynamic dual threat quarterback in the country. Yeah, maybe Jaden Daniels would be more, but physically, like what Milroe was is not Michael Penix Jr. He's a different beast in his own right. So they're going to have a little bit of a different game plan. I don't anticipate Michigan dropping 8 and just sitting back in coverage. I think they're going to want to attack them. I think Jim Harbaugh is an aggressive guy.
Oh, yeah.
All he did yesterday at the media day was talk about, being a pack of wolves and how it's a fight. And I'm like, they ain't going to be sitting in zone defense all day and allowing Michael Penix Jr. to be surgical and bleed him out all drive long. Like, they're going to try to force his hand a little bit. But you're right. Mike doesn't miss much. Again, that's why I go back. He's not playing catch. He's playing quarterback. And a lot of gimmicky offenses or different type of offenses in the country just play catch out there, meaning throw it to green grass. It's a high-low read. It's a half-field read. You don't care about what the defense is doing. Mike Leach would famously say he didn't want a quarterback to be a quote-unquote coverage scientist. In this offense, you got to be a scientist. Like, you got to seek these things out. I don't think he'll get confused a lot. To me, it's going to be in these tight windows. Last week, tipped pass late second quarter by Texas, landed in the arms of Jalen Polk for an explosive play and a touchdown. Does that turn into an interception? Is that a tip pass? Is the timing perfect and it's right beyond the fingertips of the defender? Is it a turnover? Like, that to me is how tight this thing will be. I expect it to be everything we hope a championship game to be. This will not be TCU, Georgia. Like, this will be an awesome game with two true heavyweights.
You referenced it earlier. We're talking to Yogi Roth, college football analyst with the Pac-12 Network, and he's got a new book out, 5-Star QB. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But you mentioned Polk, and you also referenced earlier McMillan, and, of course, Rome Odunze. I saw this stat, and I had to write it down because it blew me away. Penix targeted those guys last week 20 times. 19 completions for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is 353, I'm sorry. That is mind-boggling to me. I mean, 20 targets, 19 completions. So this is where, like, Rome Odunze, and we here in this part of the country, Marvin Harrison Jr. is fantastic. Odunze, I think, is right there too. But you can't just – it's not just all about Rome Odunze, correct?
Yeah, and that's going to be fun to watch because you can't take a guy away. A lot of times defenses will take a guy away in the red zone or take a guy away on a third down. Like, they'll do different things coverage-wise, or they'll spy a quarterback and drop an extra guy in the coverage. You can. And I think that's going to probably play into Michigan's hand a little bit because they're going to have to just play straight up. And I think guys play faster when they play straight up. And they're just going to have to make plays. But Jalen McMillan will be the most athletic player on the field. He's a freak athlete. Rome Odunze will be the most physically gifted skill player in this game. And it's not close. We watch him when the ball is in the air. He's got an uncanny ability to position his body and the defenders. Look at the Michigan State game for those in your region if you want to go back and watch it. Perfect coverage, perfect ball, and he makes a play. Like, these guys, they call themselves the takers because when the ball's in the air, they do take it from the defenders. I mean, it's beautiful. And what Michael Penix Jr. does so beautifully, he's at an uncanny level. I don't think I've ever seen a player throw a better, more accurate deep ball. Is that if I've got a defender inside me on my right shoulder, and he's going to throw the ball up for grabs, he's actually going to throw it up like we're in the backyard. It's going to be 6 inches away from the defender. He's got the ability to locate the ball deep down the field better than anybody in America. I mean, better than anybody in America. And I'm racking my brain. I think it's the best I've ever seen down the field, time and time again. It's not catch and run after a 5-yard in route. I mean, these are bombs. I mean, these are shots. And that's how this offense is built. They want 20% of their plays to be explosive. You got to take shots. They will drop haymakers. And what will happen on those plays? He'll be accurate. Can Michigan make a play on the ball in the air? Can they look to the ball so they don't get a PI? McMillan is dynamically athletic. Polk is just as physical as Rome Odunze. Jeremy Bernard is the next guy up. Like, he was kind of like, think of the Ohio State receiving corps a couple of years ago in the Rose Bowl. Nobody heard about some of those guys, and all of a sudden they showed up on a huge stage.
Yep.
Don't be shocked to see that from some of the backups. I think the key player in this game is Jack Westover. He's number 37. He'll be shifting and motioning all game long. Watch him. Talk about him tomorrow because he will make conversion catches. He'll move the sticks numerous times in this game. He can find soft zones against defenders. He's extremely physical. Story is one you'll love. Didn't play till his senior year. Walked on at UW. Got put on scholarship. Just continues to make plays. I interviewed him after the game. He was in tears a week ago because of his journey being so dynamic. His dream was to play for this school. Devin Culpa, tight end. He's an NFL player. Like, they have weapons, to your point, and it'll be fun. Now, look, when it's on the line, look for Rome Odunze to make a play. Like, they're going to go there, but I don't think Michigan can afford to put 2 defenders towards Rome because Penix will see it and be like, all right, no problem, McMillan. Phew, and away they go.
Okay, so let's flip this because obviously, everybody I think is wants to see, is paying to see the UW offense and the Michigan defense. But let's flip this, and the one narrative that came out of last week for Michigan against Alabama, and it doesn't happen often against Nick Saban, is they set the tone and they beat them up front. Now, Michigan's always physical. We get that. But you don't do that a lot of times to Nick Saban teams on both sides of the ball. So how does Washington, how do they line up on the defensive side of the ball? And can Michigan feel confident that they can just line up and start manhandling guys?
Well, again, UW doesn't play flag. Like they have to play tackle out on the West Coast for those out there that aren't aware of it. Tuli Nasanoa, number 91, will be he's in the conversation among the top interior defensive linemen in this game and in the country. And you don't know his name, one, because
it's so hard.
He hasn't played a lot. It's hard to say. But also because he didn't play a lot this year. Played the first couple games, got hurt, came back really at full strength in the Pac-12 title game. And that's when this defense got back to full strength. So they are feeling as confident as they ever have felt. They have a deep group of edge rushers, and I like their athleticism and physicality at linebacker. Safeties are the quarterbacks of this defense, and Cameron Fabiculanan and Asa Turner. I referenced the corner earlier, Jabbar Muhammad. The other corner, Elijah Jackson, is the guy who made the game-winning play a week ago against Texas. They're not the defense that probably Michigan is. They're not the defense that Texas was, but they still play defense. And I think the biggest key for them is pre-snap. I think they're going to have to match Michigan's movement. You probably know this. I don't know if your listeners or viewers do, but Michigan motions the most among any team in America. Around 60% of the time on their offensive snaps, they're moving people. So to me, I'm curious to see if they continue to do that. And then for UW, what they did against Texas to slow down the run is all of a sudden, third drive, after they're getting ran all over, they start sliding their front pre-snap. They start bringing linebackers and safeties down in different gaps to give a different picture, then punch out and play coverage. If I'm Michigan, I don't want UW to have an opportunity to do that. I want to do what you just said. I want to line up as fast as possible and run the ball. Run the ball. Run the ball. Make it for Ladarius Henderson and company up front easy for them to target the defenders for Washington. You do that with tempo. Michigan's not a big tempo team, as you know.
Yep.
So that to me is a wrinkle I'll be looking forward to tracking tonight in this game. And if they go with their traditional cadence, I think it's kind of an advantage for Washington because they're going to want to move enough to slow down a physical offensive unit that is, to be blunt, frustrated they did not win the Joe Moore Award for the third straight year. Like there is a thing in this game which offensive line is more physical. I interviewed Ladarius Henderson a couple of days ago, former Arizona State player, one of my just favorite personalities I've been around. Blake Corum just posted an interview I did with him. He's mission-minded, as you know. They've got depth in the backfield. Michigan's not going to all of a sudden be spread and run the air raid. They're going to try to run and establish the run. I think they will, but I don't think they'll be able to run it 12 straight times down the field. I bet they try because that's Jim Harbaugh. I feel like his personality is we want to just punch you and fight you and all those things, but I think UW's a little bit more physical than people give him credit for.
Joe Moore. Boy, you say that name in Western Pennsylvania and Erie, Pennsylvania.
Let's go.
They love it. All right. So let me shift gears a little bit just away from this game because college football is changing. I mean, it's immensely. And I've known you for a while. You're a college football junkie. I used to always laugh with Chris O'Durney, like, man, you can just tell Yog, like, he eats this stuff up. But the game, maybe the game hasn't changed, but just the outside stuff has all changed. And now the Pac-12 might not be, what they were, and it's going to be a preview of the Big Ten. Are you okay with everything? The way college football, where college football is going right now?
It's a great book called Radical Acceptance. And I haven't been able to radically accept anything this year in college football, or really the last two, but I've done my best. I think for me, when everything fell apart, the first thing I did after being like, what just happened? I went through every personal emotion, and then I really put all my focus, and I have all season, on two things. One, on the phrase, let's not miss a moment with this game. I get to call the best game out west every weekend. And in the best year that I've seen in 20 years calling games out here, being a part of this league out west, this was the most talented top to bottom. So let's not miss a moment because we're pissed about the media and the money. that has taken and shifted college football as we knew it. Two, I just try to be a rock star teammate. As the Pac-12 shifts, in the matter of months, 200 really talented people are going to lose their job. And unfortunately, now a new conference is being created where they can take the head of promos, where they could take an assistant editor, where they could take a field producer who's just getting going in their young career, a feature producer who's won multiple Emmys, but those jobs aren't really there. There's a handful of them at these other places, but Big Ten, they're a well-oiled machine. Now they're going to add, I think, a group of us, which they should, to represent the West Coast. But my focus has been really on the people, and trying to meet with as many of my colleagues. All right, what is it that you want? Let's have a brainstorm session. How can we connect? That's what this and last week we're at the CFP Bowls in New Orleans and now here in Houston of, hey, let's make sure that our cinematographer is meeting somebody from Yahoo, somebody from ESPN, whoever's in the room. So that has allowed, I think, me to go through a little bit of therapy, of you just want to show up for your teammates. And then personally, it has been beautiful, brilliant, and brutal, all at the same time. But I've always made it about the game. I've always recognized that you and I don't have jobs without the ball. That's why a ball is always on my desk in my home office. So you just kind of trust that you've done good work and the games aren't going anywhere and you're going to land somewhere. But it's sad. It's unfortunate because the Pac-12 conference stood for, elite performances in a variety of sports, but also it stood for other things, right? It stood for equity and inclusion. It stood for being innovative. It stood for a lot of things that were synonymous with the West Coast. So that's why I'm really happy that the two schools are remaining to rebuild the brand. And I look forward to seeing what that looks like over the course of the next couple of years. And I think over the course of the next few years, Chico, it will all reshuffle again. I just don't think softball heading to New Jersey from LA or Seattle is the right move for the long term, let alone the immediate. And I mean that in sincerity.
Oh, you're right. Right.
Let alone football. I still think that a Washington fan is going to care about what did Cal do on Saturday? What did Arizona do on Saturday? What did Washington State do on Saturday? Especially the first couple of years versus what happened in the Maryland game? What happened in the Rutgers game? There's still going to be a void for and a desire for West Coast coverage. So it'll be new. We'll all have to adjust to it. I don't think I've met anybody that thinks it is the best thing for the game. And then lastly, I'll quote my friend Mac Brown, the head coach at Carolina, where he told me this years ago. He came on my podcast and he said, college football is about the players and the fans. And now it's about the media and the money. And that's the reality of where we sit in terms of how we've seen conferences change and adjust. And it does feel like there's two conferences and kind of everybody else. So what's the next natural step? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to being part of this whole thing and trying to be light and serve the fans as much as possible throughout the journey.
And just a few more minutes, I promise. I know you got a busy slate. One of the things that you've and I know this is you. I've heard Herb Street say it too. He wrote about it in his book. I saw Joey Galloway talking about it as well. That nowadays kids, they got to think about, okay, well, the bowl game versus the draft, and I totally understand that, but even guys Galloway was a first-round pick. Herb Street wasn't. I know you walked on at Pitt. You strike me as somebody that would be in that category of, God, just to be able to lace it up one more time with my boys. How do you – I'm sure you've had those conversations or talked about players that you're covering that had to make that business decision. How do you wrestle with that?
Yeah, around bowl games, kind of where your head's at.
Yeah.
What you're talking about? Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to my colleague, Nigel Burton, about it. He played at Washington. He's here with his son, which is awesome. Late last night in the UW hotel. And I do think that is lost. Exactly what you said, that sentiment amid the opt-outs and, these games are terrible. I've seen all those tweets or messages on social media. And I think that what gets lost is that college football and football in general is the greatest team sport, I think, in the history of sport. It's one where you truly need everybody. It's also one that has the least amount of games. So you get limited opportunities, but you pour in throughout an entirety of an offseason for 3 or 4 months of games where you only get one a week. And I totally get and respect when players like Christian McCaffrey, who's kind of the first guy to ever sit out a bowl game, uh, as well as the numerous players that have this year. And I understand it. I don't begrudge it by any stretch of the imagination. I also think that we shouldn't lump every bowl game into like this is terrible. I mean, we should recognize like, yeah, dude, these guys, a lot of them, it's the last time they're ever going to play. Let them go play. It's going to look different. I think that we should eliminate like conference bowl standings because they're not reflective of the year in the conference. I don't think they should be a launching pad necessarily for preseason rankings next year. I think they are what they are, which is an evaluation of some players that haven't played. Now, the bigger thing that I think should change is that we need to adjust the calendar dramatically in college football. Because the truth is, to me and other coaches that I've talked to, man, is the season's so amazing. And then the minute championship weekend is over, it's like, whoa, college football is kind of ugly because it's portal, NIL, so many changes. And I've asked coaches that. I said, does it feel like that? And they're like, yeah, it was so fun in the season. You're with your team. Then it's over and it's bam, this crazy business. And what I think is happening is that fans feel that too. And you're like, I don't know if I really love what college football is becoming. And I think if the organizers, whomever they may be in college football, took a page from the NFL and said, let's make these moments all entertaining. And let's have a moment when free agency drops or NIL and the portal drops. Let's have a moment when, there's a salary cap introduced to college football. Like, let's have some windows where signing day isn't, jumbled with a bowl game, which is mixed in with the portal, which is mixed in with new hires and fires. Like, I think, that would be a really good thing for the sport. And, the problem with that is that we forget that they go to class. You can't change it all. Like Washington started class this week. They had classes on Wednesday. They got back Tuesday, had to go to class Wednesday. I don't know how many went, but they had school.
Oh, boy. The book is 5-Star QB. It's not about the stars. It's about the journey. I can't wait to get my hands on this one. Tell us about it, bud.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's really an illustration of what it's like to be a big-time quarterback recruit. And we talked to over 50 quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy, C.J. Stroud. You name the quarterback, they're probably in it. Some names from way back in the day, like Shane Morris at Michigan, if you remember him. It's really Justin Zwick, who was really one of the first recruits to be deemed a bust.
Yep.
Tyler Palko, who you know well, and then 50 plus coaches, GMs, athletic personnel, parents of players like Lisa McCaffrey and Bryce Young's father's in the book. And we just try to pour in and be like, if I'm a recruit, if I'm an 8th grader trying to figure this thing out, really in any sport, and I want to hear what was it like for the 10th grader that was Bo Nix? How do I figure out my recruiting visit? Or the transfer portal quarterback? Or, hey, mental health? Or, hey, how should I be a parent? We asked all the players to give us their advice. And Joey Roberts, who's the co-author, and we organized it. And it was a lot. It's 3 years worth of work, man. But it's been really fun because I think it does give you great perspective of what a players go through, what a parents go through, and hopefully offer some tools as they navigate that. Because unfortunately, you can't Google how to be the parent of a walk-on or how to be the parent of a 3-star or a 5-star. You need help. So we try to throw down and give some help.
5-Star QB. It's not about the stars. It's about the journey. Check it out on Amazon, wherever you get your books. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on this one, as I said. And, Yogi, I can't thank you enough, man. I spent way too much of your time. I said I'd only take 15. I knew that was a lie when I said that. But I figured if I said I need a half hour, I'd say, yes, you would definitely know that.
Yeah.
Best of luck the rest of the way. The family, I love it all, man. I love it all. I love you. You're just an inspiring guy. Keep up the good work and enjoy the game tonight. All right.
Yeah, you got it, bro. Lots of love. See ya.
All right, Yogi Roth again, longtime college football analyst, walk on at Pitt. And also went on to coach under Pete Carroll at USC. Heard him talking about interesting comps that he was talking about too, with some of those teams. I mean, you're talking about, and we're talking about USC for those of you that are a little bit younger. Those early, the Reggie Bush days. Those were. I mean, those teams were absolutely. You couldn't stop them. I mean, you couldn't stop them. But man, Yogi has so many good stuff, so many good stories to tell, but more importantly, a guy that truly gets it, and I love talking to him. So good stuff there. We will take a break. We come back. We will play a little fair or foul. We will get maybe some predictions, maybe a prediction on tonight's game, and get you set for tomorrow. And again, tomorrow on the Bold Ball Breakdown with myself and Nick Shook, we're going to be all over the Browns and the Houston Texans coming up this Saturday at 4:30. More to come of the Chico Borman Show right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back as we wind things down on this Monday. Big week in store. Playoffs finally here. Last week, I'll be honest with you, last week it stunk. Like, it was fun knowing that, hey, the Browns are in the playoffs, that whole, like, oh, this is a good feeling. Like, they're not playing for anything, but it's different this year because they're in the postseason and all that stuff. But at some point, it was just like, I don't know what to do with myself. So last week kind of stunk. I'm glad to be now where we are. It's game week. It's playoff week. Browns, Texans, Saturday at 4:30. Winner moves on. Loser is going home. Just, it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than that. We'll be breaking it down tomorrow from noon to 1, myself and Nick Shook. But right now, the bombastic one will be breaking down a little fair foul on this Monday edition. What's up, Bone?
What's up, Chico? So I want to kick things off with talking a little bit of Browns-Texans.
Yeah.
So the last time that the Browns matched up against the Texans, of course, you'll recall Amari Cooper setting a franchise record. Joe Flacco throwing the ball all over the yard, 368 yards. With that said, on the downside of things, they rushed the ball 30 times, only had managed 54 total yards. So with that, it feels like obviously in a playoff atmosphere, unlikely that Flacco is going to throw for 368 again. Fair or foul, the Browns need to rush for more than 54 yards in order to beat the Texans.
Need to? No. Will they? I think yes. But, I mean, this is, again, I think you saw Flacco. Houston defensively, if you look at the numbers, and I was the only reason I was looking at the numbers is somebody wrote a great column about it. Houston versus like play action and just certain offenses and certain styles of offenses really struggle. And this is one that they, we can talk about Case Keenum and C.J. Stroud all we want on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, Joe Flacco just lit them up. And I think it's going to be more about like those big plays. Can Houston, and if you're Kevin Stefanski, of course you're coming out firing. You want to see what did they learn, and what have they. I agree with you. I want to see them run the ball more than that. I don't think they need to though necessarily to win, because I think ultimately the defense is going to do their job against C.J. Stroud and company.
Yeah, I guess I'm inclined to agree with you, Chico.
Well, you just admit it. You're having a hard time because this is, it's CJ, it's your boy. I don't quite understand I don't know, Boom. I don't know.
Well, elsewhere in the NFL, Chico, I don't know if you saw how things unfolded between the Saints and the Falcons.
I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah, so interception by the Saints. They take the ball down to the 1 yard line, get into victory formation, and they do the fake knee and hand it off to Jamal Williams. Now, this was something where after the game, you saw Arthur Smith, prior to getting fired by the Falcons organization, he comes up for that post-game handshake. He's like, "What the F were you doing out there?" And Dennis Allen admittedly came out after and said that this was something where the players went against his wishes, and he apologized to the Falcons organization. Jameis Winston said it was a team decision where all of the players on the field wanted to do it. First off, do you think that it's fair or foul to run a fake knee handoff from the one?
Totally foul. I mean, you don't do that. I mean, it's on Jameis, I believe. Now, the one thing that I am curious about is that those two, and it's always been this way, especially when the teams are comparable. Atlanta, New Orleans has always been a pretty good rivalry. So, and I think Dennis Allen even admitted, like, yeah, it gets heated every now and then, but that was Jameis. But you can't be doing that, dude. Like, come on. I know, Jamal Williams is, but you can't be doing that. It was weak. It was bad. It was Bush League, whatever. So,
honestly, I see it from both sides, Chico, because obviously, like, it's cold-blooded to do that when you're up 41-17 or whatever the score was at the end of the game. But at the same time, I try to imagine Jamal Williams' perspective.
Yeah, okay, but here's the thing, Bohm. They all know how they feel about him. He doesn't need to get the ball to go across the goal line for that to get be hammered home to him. Yeah, you can feel that way about him. I'm sure they do. But him getting the ball and getting across the goal line, it doesn't reinforce that anymore. It's stupid. It was a very stupid decision if it was Jameis Winston. Very stupid decision on his part.
All right, well, elsewhere in the NFL, obviously there was some talk last week of Jim Schwartz potentially pursuing a head coaching opportunity next season. However, I thought it was interesting, and I saw this graphic of from Jay Glazer talking on Fox a little bit about potential defensive coordinators who could be head coaching candidates. And so he listed off a number of them, 9 to be exact. Jim Schwartz was excluded from that list. He was not listed. Now, fair or foul, Chico, do you think that there are 9 candidates who would be more appealing as a defensive coordinator that is a defensive coordinator as a head coach?
No, foul. No, I think maybe where Jay Glazer's coming from is maybe and we have to remember this. Like this was news here because Jim Schwartz was asked. I think Mary Kay asked the question about coaching again. And while Mary Kay and I think we all anticipated Jim Schwartz saying, look, I'll address that later. I'm looking forward to this weekend. I've got Cincinnati, and then we're in the playoffs. But he actually was very candid about it. And he said, am I? Yeah, I would like another chance. So because of that, it became a story for us. What I don't know is maybe Jay Glazer didn't get wind of that. We just assumed everybody heard that. That's not necessarily. So Jay Glazer might just assume that Jim Schwartz has no interest in being a head coach again. I don't think that's necessarily a knock by Jay Glazer. I just think it's Jay Glazer saying, I bet Jim Schwartz doesn't want another shot at head coaching again in the NFL. And if he did know that, probably you would have him high on the list. No, there's no doubt in my mind you would.
Yeah, I definitely don't think Jay Glazer was trying to slight Jim Schwartz there. That'd be a hell of a way to do it. But anyway.
Well, why would you ask it then?
No, I just thought it was interesting. Obviously this is a well-connected guy who has some of the best inside sources.
So you're saying that? So what? Okay. So what was what was the question you had then? 9? Is it fair or foul? What?
9 defensive coordinators who would be a more appealing head coaching candidate than Jim Schwartz. Yeah. So interestingly, Washington Commanders decided to move on from Ron Rivera yesterday.
You didn't think they were going to keep him, did you?
Well, no. That's not the part that I find so interesting.
Oh.
No shock there. However, what is, I think, interesting is their decision to bring in 2-time NBA Executive of the Year, Bob Myers, to help run their franchise. And I've seen this draw some comparisons to the Browns bringing in Paul DePodesta, who, of course, got his start in baseball. Fair or foul if you're a Commanders fan and believing in Bob Myers to be, I suppose, the savior of this franchise that has felt cursed for so long?
Foul, but I don't. Well, I'm just the way you presented that. I don't think they're looking at him as the savior. Here's the interesting thing. Belichick, everybody's waiting to see what happens with Belichick in New England, and Belichick has. If we think it's over. What I think is the better question, if I'm a Washington fan, I guess I'm cool with having Bob Myers on board if he knows how to, can help you out somehow, some way. How much say he's going to have as far as personnel, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But my biggest question is, again, some of these franchises that might consider Bill Belichick. If I'm a Washington fan, I think it's okay. I think we feel guilty or we feel ashamed. Anybody who says, no, as great as Belichick is, I don't want him for my team. And I think Washington fans, a lot of them probably feel that way. If you're a Chargers fan, you probably feel that way because the guy's in his 70s and, he would want control but they would want him to hire a GM. I don't know. I think the whole situation is kind of odd. But as far as Bob Myers, I don't think anybody in Washington's looking at him as a savior. They had to cut ties with Ron Rivera, but where they go from here is going to be very, very interesting. And I wouldn't doubt if the majority of Commanders fans are saying, we respect Bill Belichick, but I don't want him running my team right now.
You mentioned Belichick. I've seen him, just based off reports, I've seen him linked to 3 teams so far: the Chargers, the Commanders, as well as the Falcons. And I think it is interesting to see how that does play out because Bill has still not been let go of his job. He's still, right now, is the head coach.
Falcons is gaining a lot of steam.
Yeah, and
the Falcons thing is gaining a lot of steam.
Another potential addition to the Falcons, or at least I have seen links to it, because of this particular player's performance yesterday, Justin Fields, Chico. And we've talked about it for the last couple of weeks. Last week we were saying, we don't know what'll happen. Maybe they actually might hang on to Justin Fields. But this week, it was a bit of a rough day at the office for one Justin Fields. And I don't want to put that all on him. But regardless, it was an underwhelming performance. And meanwhile, on the other side, you have Love. I don't know why I'm blanking on the first name.
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love.
Yep.
Just balling out. Guys are getting open, but he's hitting them all with defenders, fitting him through tight windows past defenders. fair or foul, Justin Fields has officially played his way out of Chicago yesterday.
Okay, I don't like the way you present. Played his way out. No, played his last game for Chicago. I'm going to go fair on that. I think so. Kyle Brandt, who does a great job with Good Morning Football and has had a very one of the most interesting careers of anyone on planet Earth. Very good at what he does, and he had it was about a 5-minute monologue over the weekend before that game, and he said, "Look, Justin, life's not fair, and you should probably remain the Bears quarterback, and they probably shouldn't move on from you. But here's the thing. If you really want to be the Bears quarterback, go out and get this win. Even if it doesn't necessarily mean anything about playoffs, like go out and beat the hated rival. Beat them at their place, beat the hated rival, and kind of seal it for you." Now, he has a lot of respect and I think support from his teammates. But Kyle's point was, these are the games that you really want to win. And I don't want to say that the decision to keep him or to move on from him and draft a Caleb Williams or whoever came down to that game. But Kyle's point was a good one. Like, leave no doubt, go out and have a great, great performance against the Packers. And he didn't do that. Again, is it all on him? No. But that might be, that last taste in the mouth for the powers that be in Chicago. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, I saw that video from Kyle Brandt, and a lot of people were kind of rallying behind it, but I didn't like it because I felt like you're putting an unnecessary pressure on him that not like.
Well, because he's a Buckeye. If he was a Michigan quarterback, you'd say it was a fair. It was a fair point.
I will say this about Justin Fields: if I'm viewing him trying to view him objectively as a Bears fan who did not care so much about Ohio State and Ohio State alum, I think I would want to move on from him and just draft Caleb Williams. Honestly, Justin Fields is a playmaker. He's a gamer. I think in the right circumstances, he can still be a baller, but he's not going to find him in Chicago. I don't think that he's done enough. And Caleb Williams, that's when you're sitting at pick number 1 overall, that's going to be tough to pass up. That's just, I hate to say it, and I think that Justin Fields' career is not done in the NFL.
No.
I would like to see him go to a team like Atlanta or something. I feel like he could really thrive there with those weapons. Obviously, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, all those guys. So I expect him to get another chance. I just don't know if he'll find it in Chicago. And I digress. That is fair or foul.
Okay. All right. That is fair or foul on this Monday. As far as Justin Fields is concerned, yeah, I'm kind of surprised you went that route. Like, I think he's done enough to
I think especially yesterday, just seeing the contrast between him and Jordan Love, right? And where it felt like almost every drive, the Packers, he's hitting big throws when his team needs him to. And meanwhile, Justin Fields, he does hold on to the ball too long, but a lot of it also was he had to run for his life. He was getting pressured. He was missing throws. And occasionally, he would connect with DJ Moore, but it was a frustrating thing to watch, especially when you see the other guy in that opposing uniform just dicing up your secondary.
Yeah, Jordan Love, I'll tell you what, they had a graphic of Jordan Love's first season versus Aaron Rodgers' first season, and I'll admit,
comparable.
I was one of the first ones this year. I wasn't a big Jordan Love guy. I'm definitely, he's much better than I thought he was. But
he's been fun to watch.
But I did not expect him to be as good as he has been. And, if you're Chicago, you are looking at that. Like, as much as you're looking at Justin Fields, you are looking at the guy across from him going, okay, you look at this division, Detroit's not going anywhere. They're on the, arrow pointing up. Green Bay, much of it was, what does Jordan Love do this year? Is he going to be their guy? Well, he's clearly their guy. So if you're Chicago, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be very fascinating to see what, in fact, they decide to do. Yes, Boom.
That matchup, by the way, with the Cowboys is fascinating, I think. You just used that word, but whatever. I think
if
it's
you find it fascinating, you can steal fascinating.
I do, and could this be a Mike McCarthy revenge game? But at the same time, Dallas has yet to prove to me that they're a legitimate contender because, they've put up the numbers and, they've won enough games, but they haven't done so many against opponents over 500. So there's a lot to be proven in that game. And then, of course, Jordan Love's first postseason game.
I think the Cowboys being at home is going to be significant. I mean, we'll get into this much later in the week, but I think that's going to be significant. The other thing about McCarthy, like as much as he's had, because as much as like you praise some of Mike McCarthy, like a lot of it is boneheaded clock management stuff from this year. But then you look down and think about all the storied Cowboys coaches. Tom Landry and Jimmy Johnson. And I think they said McCarthy. Now, again, we're going to expanded schedules and more games, but Mike McCarthy, I think, has, what was it? The only coach in Cowboys history with like 3 consecutive 12-win seasons or something like that. And again, Tom Landry played during 14-game seasons, for God's sake. But what are the Cowboys? Well, it's like every other team now that's in the postseason. It'll be decided in the postseason. And make no mistake, the Cowboys just getting there is not going to be good enough for Jerry, for the fans, for everybody. I like them against Green Bay. I think at home, I think they're going to be fine. But, after that, a team like the Rams and Sean McVay, I think it is so wide open. And then you look at, there's no dominant team in the NFC. The Eagles, other than the 49ers. The Eagles, we thought were that team along with the 49ers. They're not. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be, there's so many crazy narratives after this weekend. I mean, then in the AFC, like we said, the Steelers get in as the final wild card. What do Steeler fans think now? If they wanted him fired, now, they get in the postseason. Okay, well, it came at the expense of, somebody else lost and whatever, but you're still in the postseason. Problem is you're going to have to travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. But we don't worry about that. We simply worry about the Browns getting set to take on the Houston Texans Saturday at 4:30. Much more on that game, breaking it down in great detail tomorrow from noon to 1. The Bold Ball Breakdown, myself and Nick Shook, as it is now the playoff edition. Man, that sounds good to say. Feels good to say. Want to say thank you to Terry Pluto from Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer for joining us. Talked a lot of Browns, also threw a little Cavs in there. Yogi Roth was outstanding for tonight's college national championship game, Michigan and UW. All right, boom. Who you got between the Huskies and the Wolverines? Two very fierce dogs.
I got to go with
fierce
the Huskies.
Animals.
Got to go with the Huskies, Chico. And especially after hearing all that Yogi Roth, UW propaganda. I mean, come on, this offense.
Propaganda.
It kind of was. No, it was great. Great insight. It was the West Coast perspective, and I appreciate being enlightened on such perspectives.
It's weird because I think both of these teams have a legit gripe to feel slighted. Washington more than Michigan. But even with Michigan, like people are like, well, they can't. If you're even against Alabama, right? I mean, Alabama's playing, myself included, Jalen Milroe. Michigan brings that tenacity that we're going to spank you. We're going to be physical with you. We're not messing around. And that's not easy to do against Nick Saban teams. You heard Yogi say that as athletic and as much of an air raid as you'll see with Penix, they are very physical as well. I really want to see Michigan on offense. Like, what do they decide to do? Do they play with some tempo? Do they try, or is it just all about, hey, we're going to try to keep Penix off the field and just beat you down physically? I think it's going to be a phenomenal matchup. I think we're all going to lose a lot of sleep tonight because I think it's going to go down to the very end. But I think in the end, I'm going UW as well. And yeah, a little bit, maybe the hard. I think Michael Penix. This is the fitting final chapter of what has been an amazing, amazing year for that Husky team and for him specifically. All right, we're out of time. We'll do it again tomorrow at noon. Until then, for Terry Pluto, Yogi Roth, thanks to those guys, also Michael Bohm, and most of all of you, I'm Mike Chico Borman. Until tomorrow, make it a great rest of your Monday, everybody. See you.